Hey, folks, it's Panthers beat writer Mike Kaye. And if you feel like you've aged 10 years over the last week, it's because you've lived through the 2025 NFL draft along with myself and fellow Panthers beat reporter Alex Zietlow. This is the Processing Blue podcast where we discuss the Panthers and everything around Process Blue. Alex, sporting a brand new haircut that ages him at least 5 years in a good way, is here with us today. Alex, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I don't know if I'm getting to that age to where 5 years is not necessarily a compliment, dude. I mean, I know that you like to make our listeners and our Twitter followers and whoever think that I'm like 15 years old, but I'm 28. Like 5 years. 5 years could
That's
mean
still younger than me. Adding 5 years.
I'm not. And
What
guess
are you
what?
trying to say?
What are you
No
trying to say?
way to
Oh, listen, 33 is a beautiful age.
It is. It's actually one of my favorite years.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it is. I very much look forward to it. I'm just saying by 33, um, you know, I might have a family. I might have all these things going on. 28 just I look how I look. I don't really know how else to put it. But yeah, no, you meant it as a compliment. I'm gonna take it as such. Thank you. Shout out Sprite. Shout out Sprite for getting me through this NFL draft. Shout out the song "Put On" by Jeezy. Talk about aging yourself. Like, I don't know why that song was just blaring through my head throughout the entire draft weekend, but it was. And shout out to my colleagues, Mike Kaye, Lydia Craver. Not really Zach Dennis, because we give him too much love on this podcast. But shout out everybody. It was a good draft weekend.
Scott Fowler, we should add.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Yes. You might have heard of him. Anyway, it was a grueling weekend, but I think a grueling weekend that came with a lot of fun and potential, and I think a very mature draft process by a front office that really needed to knock this draft out of the park. I don't know that they necessarily knocked it out of the park, but they definitely got to third base with time to spare at minimum. I think this is a pretty strong draft class for Dan Morgan and the Panthers front office. I think it's very clear that there was a strong process here. They started with 9 picks. They bring in 8 prospects. I love some of the work that they did on day 2. We'll get into that. But I think overall, this was a draft class that showed that this organization was maturing in its second year as a leadership beacon, right? Like, so Dan Morgan, Brant Tillis, Dave Canales, made thoughtful choices. It didn't seem like there was any panic to any of the moves. I think so. I did a grading the draft. The lowest grade that I gave them on a pick was a C+. And honestly, after going back and watching the film on Travis Etienne, who I gave a C+ to, if he can become a dual purpose returner, I would probably boost that grade to a B. And I gave the overall all class a B+. But let's break this down, because that's what we do here at Processing Blue. We're going to process this draft. And we'll see how it all turns out, because I think Alex and I both have different kind of perspectives on the draft. Let's get into what didn't happen first, okay?
For sure.
You had them taking Jalen Walker. I had them taking in a mock draft, I had them trading back and getting a guy who eventually went to 44, so I got egg on my face too. In Donovan Ezaraku, I think the Cowboys got a steal there, but that's not the point. But I had them trading back, and they didn't end up trading back. What they did was they stayed at 8. Jalen Walker was on the board. They took a wide receiver, T-Mac McMillan. And I think, it speaks to kind of what happened. What I've been kind of talking about from the jump is that this front office has been preaching size and length for literally since they were hired. And I don't think it gets more size and length than Titaro McMillan, because he is everything of his, 6'4", 219-pound frame. He's got ridiculous length. I was actually kind of surprised his arms were only 31.5 inches.
Same, yeah.
Arm length has become like a weird like side commentary of mine. I like, you know, I had one of those things where you pull a string and be like, what's his size? What's his arm length? Um, and so, I think he's a really, really good player. Alex, before I get into kind of my scouting report of him, what did you take away from the pick?
Yeah. As far as Teteroa McMillan is concerned, I think he's a wonderful player. I think that he can really impact this offense. He's big, he's strong, he makes catches in coverage. It just after seeing the pick, you go and you go on a rabbit hole and you watch all of these workout videos of him plucking balls from the air with one hand. You see highlight tapes of him, making contested catches. The contested catch rate for this guy is crazy. Like he's really fun to watch. He's not super fast, and that was my very initial takeaway of, okay, this wide receiver room didn't add a lot of speed, which is something they desperately needed last year. But also at the same time, like you've alluded to, like others have alluded to in their own reporting, he moves still really well, and his ability to make contested catches can still make him a deep threat. So I think he's a wonderful prospect. The thing that I will not stand down from is he's not the guy that I would have taken. I think that the fact that Jalen Walker was still on the board is, I think the Panthers should have ultimately gone with him. They should have found a way to work in a defensive player at the number 8. If I was the guy drafting, we had the Jalen Walker conversation last week, so we don't have to relitigate it here. But I'm just saying, like, my opinion hasn't changed. Now Jalen Walker's went to Atlanta. And not only that, the Falcons also traded up and got James Pierce Jr., another really sought after, intangibly rich edge rusher. And so these guys are going to be wreaking havoc in the backfield of NFC South backfields for like years to come, in theory.
Well, they better hope that the James Pierce thing works out, because that trade was horrific value. Like, how people talked about how the Rams gave up too much to move up in the second round with the Panthers last year?
Yeah.
Unquestionably, in this draft class, the Falcons gave up exponentially more value than they should have to trade up to get James Pierce.
I mean, we can move, marbles on the what's that thing? What's that calculator thing? Oh, come on, Zach, you can help me out on this. Okay. Anyway, we can dissect all this value if you want. The fact is that James Pierce Jr. is like one of the fastest edge rusher in this draft class. Is remarkably powerful. Is he fell in the draft boards. He was initially a top 10 pick, or a top 10 prospect, and he fell for a variety of reasons. But the point is that that's the Falcons went out and made it a huge priority to bulk up their outside linebacker spot, their edge rusher spot, whatever. And we'll see how that works out for them. One final thing, Mike, before you kind of do your thing on Teteroa, other guys still on the board when McMillan was taken. Kelvin Beggs Jr., the offensive tackle out of Texas. Colston Loveland, tight end out of Michigan. Michael Williams, edge out of Georgia. Kenneth Grant, defensive tackle out of Michigan. Walter Nolan, defensive tackle out of Ole Miss. Do any of those guys scream, okay, it would have been helpful for the Panthers to take them instead of McMillan, or are you cool with the McMillan pick over those guys?
Walter Nolan was a guy that I was like, if they got stuck and Walker and Teteroa were off the board and Mason Graham was off the board, I mean, that was a highly unlikely thing. Walter Nolan makes sense from a scheme standpoint. He makes sense from a size length standpoint. I know there were some questions about, his football character throughout the league, but to me, he would have been the one guy. I mean, look, I think Jalen Walker is going to be a very good player, and the Falcons run a pretty comparable defense. I think the difference is, as I've said several times, Evero is in a different situation than Raheem Morris. And when you're in a different situation, whether you would hope that the guy would work out for just the team and not necessarily to save his job, you are stacking the deck against him if he does not fit what the philosophy of the defense is. And so I think, like, to me, Walter Nolan, you talked about the edge rushers. We'll get into that a little bit in the podcast because I actually do think they stayed close to philosophy and really gave Evero no excuses at this point, as far as talent and prospects go. But I think Walter Nolan would have been the one guy who would have been like, okay, if they're stuck, they're stuck. And listen, there's been reports that they got offers for trades and whatever. That doesn't mean that they were like tangible trade offers, as in like, I could offer you, a third and a fifth to move from 8 to 11. If you don't view that as like even close to a substantial offer, that's not legitimate trade value, right? Like, if somebody was like, we'll give you a first in 2026 to move up, and they turned it down, that's a legitimate, like, yeah, they were turning down offers left and right. You know what I mean? Like that, to me, I think we're losing kind of the mark here. But as far as I know, McMillan was extremely high on their board. He was a guy they had conviction in. They did a really good job of keeping that quiet. And honestly, it's one of the first times that I feel like I've been truly stumped heading into a draft that I was covering where a team had a pick in the top 16 of a draft. But here's what I would say about McMillan. I did some tape study and I wrote this down just because I wanted to collect my thoughts. But here's what I wrote. McMillan isn't NFL fast, but he's certainly smooth in almost everything that he does. He makes jump balls look easy, and he's not afraid of running through defenders. He plays to his size and doesn't try to be another type of wideout. That's really important, by the way. We'll get back to that in a second. His ability to make a catch and immediately elude a defender is promising. He's not a burner, but his acceleration in the open field could lead to massive plays. He has great coordination and concentration as a jump ball catcher. He turns 50-50 balls into 80-20 balls. And I think that's really important when you're dealing with a smaller wide receiver, or excuse me, a smaller quarterback who's got to throw into tight windows and into tight coverage. And I think he's a guy who's going to bully smaller corners. Every corner is going to be smaller than him, but he is really going, like, if you have a 5'11" guy on him, good luck.
Sure.
And I think there are times where it looks like he's running a lazy route or he's running slow on purpose, and I'd love to get some like perspective on that. I think that's a little bit of a concern. Like, everything kind of seems effortless. Like, if you go out to the West Coast, and anybody who's on the West Coast knows that, like, me being from the Northeast, right, and you being from the Southeast, everybody has a different temperament and kind of like a way of going about things. He is very much a California route runner, if that makes sense. Like, he is very chill. Like, everything is smooth about him. There's no it's not like urgency for the sake of urgency, which I would say would be more of my outlook, right? But I think that can be coached up into where I think he can become, like, just because he's not particularly urgent doesn't mean he can't be urgent. And I'm not saying that as like a diss or anything. Like, that's not like I just think like there's further coaching that he needs, and once they unlock that could be a really, really huge step for him forward. I think Rob Moore's the perfect coach for him. I like the pick. I gave it a B, but partially because I understand the circumstances. I like the player, but I also feel like, Alex, I agree with you. I think like trading back and getting a defensive player could have been an opportunity there. Let's move on to Nick Scorton, who I like tiredly called Nick Scourton for all of day two. I like
This when you make Mike, when you make errors, you don't need to rehash them. You could just bleep.
I'm accountable. I mean, maybe everybody else wants to say their piece and walk on like some other people, but look, this is what you do with Processing Blue. This is what you do with the Charlotte Observer. You want accountability for both the subject and the writer or the talker, and that's what I'm all about. Anyway, let's talk about Nick Scorton. I love that pick. Love it. Love it. I gave it an A. I think it is absolutely a smart process. Here's why. He is not going to turn 21 until August. You are taking a pass rusher as he develops into his body. He has lost over 25 pounds over the last, 6 months. And even before then, if you watch the tape, dude had some pretty good burst. He's got some pretty good speed off the line. He is a natural edge setter. He fits this defense to a T, 33-inch arms, uses them well. He can set the edge. Like, I think, here's what I wrote before we get into, because I don't want to delay this. So here's what I wrote. I can't believe the kid is 20. He's right when he says that he is a thinker on the field. He told us that after the draft, because he doesn't stop when the ball goes to the other side or past the first level. He's very deliberate, but also has a very good motor. At minimum, he could develop into a top-level run-stopping outside linebacker in the next few years. At best, he could be the next great edge out of Texas A&M. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but based on his college career and traits and the weight loss, he's got the makeup to be really good edge and a long-term solution to this long-term issue. There's a completeness to him. He can do anything. I mean, if he gets the right coaching and sticks to what he's doing, this kid has massive potential. Like, NFL.com compared him to Trey Hendrickson. I think he's more athletic than Trey Hendrickson. I also think he's better off in a 2-point stance than a 3-point stance, which Hendrickson is more of a 3-point stance guy. I love this pick. He's going to grow into it. He's not going to be, he's going to be 24 at the end of his rookie contract. Like,
that's insane. That's insane.
And if you re-sign him and you sign him to a 4-year deal, guess what? This guy's going to bank in again. So at 28, like, you could have this guy for the next 10 to 15 years if he works out properly. I think he is a slam dunk pick. It's exactly what you want to do. It's a premium position. You're drafting young, but also has production and all the traits. He's a guy. He's a guy. I would be genuinely surprised if he does not have an impact this year, even with Evero's history. We went over that last week. I know some people have pushed back against that, but go check out the facts. We've got a mailbag coming out on Wednesday as well. You can kind of look at the history of Evero, because was asked about that quite a bit. Alex, what do you take of Nick Scorton?
Yeah, dude, I agree with you. He's Daniel Jeremiah's 4th best prospect on his top 150 list. He's productive. He had 10 sacks in 2023 at Purdue and also did similar things at Texas A&M. He's got a spin move. He
that spin move's deadly, dude, too.
Well, like and here's one thing. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves because I know we're going to talk about Princely Uman Nielemen. I know we're going to talk about him, but like, they play off each other well in theory, complementary football wise. So that's compelling. And also real quick about his weight loss, he lost 28 pounds by his pro day. He was listed at 285 at the end of his.
It was by the combine, so even earlier. I'm sorry, in February.
Oh, okay, yeah, all right. Well, but I was referring to his pro day numbers as well. But yeah, he lost a lot of weight after his season at Texas A&M, and he made it seem like it wasn't a product of heavy dieting or like trying to sculpt his body right before the draft or whatever. It seemed like it was a product of just healthy living, having a disciplined diet, and growing into his body. Like you said, he's not even 21 yet. So, I mean, this guy's great, and he should be great. And, like the Panthers clearly had some intel, and they knew to trade up for him because they were going to have 57 pick. They traded up to 51 and got their guy.
Yeah, and I kind of want to talk about that too before we get into Princely Uman. I thought the trade that they did was actually really bright. They swapped 4 picks. They moved up from the 7th to the 6th round. They traded back in the 2nd, or they traded back in the 3rd and the 4th round. I think that was really smart. I thought it showed outside the box kind of thinking. You don't really see, 8 pick trades where both teams keep the same amount of picks for the most part. And so I think that was really impressive. So let's get into Princely because I know you're very high on him. I gave the pick a B plus. Part of me wanted to give him an A minus. Listen, if you were a Panthers fan who badly wanted Josh Sweat, well, you ended up getting him in the draft. This is Josh Sweat, in my opinion. I actually think Umon Milan, after covering Josh Sweat for most of his career, is a better, uh, is a little bit more athletic. Doesn't have the knee issues that Josh Sweat had. Oh, and by the way, he's 23 right now. So, I think he genuinely fits this whole thing. Here's what I wrote about him. It's very quick. It's not like the other ones because I knew Alex wanted to talk about it. If you don't get a firm grip on Umon Milan immediately as a lineman, he's going to crown your QB into the ground. That's something that you have to. I mean, he's going to be a situational pass rusher off the jump. I don't care if Evero doesn't want to play him. I don't care if AC Carter wants to wait. This kid is ready to play right now. And honestly, I would not be shocked if he plays more than Nick Gordon early on that first 2 months of the season. But here's what I want to touch on when we talked about the Jalen Walker thing. Again, we talk about accountability, right? So I said that Jalen Walker didn't fit the size kind of range. So here's Jalen Walker.
Let's pull that string back, dog. Let's talk arm length.
6'1", 243, 32-inch arms. Cool. Okay. Princely, 6'4", that's 3 inches taller. 244. He's svelte, so he weighs less, but 33 and 7/8 arms. Squirtin. Jeez, I'm gonna keep doing that. 6'3", 2 inches taller. 257, 14 pounds heavier, and his arm length is 33 inches. We could actually go through the current pass rushers on the depth chart if we were not pressed for time, and you would see that falls in line with everybody who's on the roster right now. Just point blank, period. And you brought up the Falcons double dipping from the standpoint of James Pierce and Jalen Walker. What I would say to you is them trading up to get James Pierce tells you everything you need to know about how they view Jalen Walker as a pass rusher. He's going to probably play inside quite a bit. I don't think that this is going to be 2 full-time pass rushers that they just drafted. That's not really, I mean, either that or they're nuts, because that's, I mean, you're really spending a lot of assets on just fixing a position with 2 pass rushers when frankly the GM needs to win now. I think Jalen Walker will probably be used as a pass rusher on 3rd down, and that's fine. That's what a lot of people project him to be, but I think that's a different projection of what a top 10 value would be. Anyway, look, Umon Milan, like you said, complements Gordon extremely well. Talk to me about it.
Well, if I had something to say about the Atlanta thing, but let's talk about Princely first. So, like I said, they're complementary guys. If Squirtin is this dude who has quote unquote heavy hands and can just like bully his way into backfields with a really quick burst and like his just like strength and all this stuff. Princely is more of this guy who has a finesse game. He has like a deep bag of tools to get into the backfield and all these things that you've heard about on draft night if you were paying attention and all these things. However, after we talk to him, firstly, I just know that I'm going to enjoy covering Princely. Like he's going to be so funny.
He's a likable dude.
And also the Panthers drafted 3 guys who played with, or 2 other guys who played with Princely at Florida. So like this draft class is going to know each other really well, which I find kind of fascinating. A lot of SEC guys as well, which is clearly a priority of this, or maybe not like an outright priority, but they clearly graded prospects out of the SEC higher than other places. But
I think it shows you who they trust from a scouting perspective of their area scouts. And I also think it kind of shows you they just want to draft good players, right? They're not trying to be the smartest guys in the room and draft a guy from like Abilene Christian, early. You know what I mean? Like that. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Just the one thing that I wanted to touch on. So he's known as this guy with the finesse game,
Mm.
and I asked a lot of the prospects, what is one like misconception about your game that you want to prove at the NFL level? And his answer was funny, but it was also pretty revealing. This is what he said: I think the power aspect of my game, I think I'm a really powerful guy, and people kind of don't acknowledge that. But I feel like it's because when I was in college, I really was like a bit spoiled. I don't know if I would say spoiled. Maybe I'm just that good. You know what I'm saying? When we're to the point where I don't have to use my power against offensive tackles, I was winning with my moves, so there was no reason to convert to power. There were times where I go power, and it does show up on film a lot. I squat 700 pounds, so I know I have a lot of power, and I just feel like showing that a little bit more will be important. Uh, that's a guy who clearly has confidence in his game. He was trying. He kind of like I read the full quote. I probably should have edited it before I got on the podcast, but I read the full quote. He's basically saying like, "Yo, I won with my finesse game. I became a third round draft pick and was wreaking havoc everywhere with the moves that I had at my disposal with this like sophisticated part of my game. I promise you, I got the power to complement that too, and I'll use that in the NFL. I just didn't necessarily have a reason to show it at the college level. And I think that's pretty fair, and I think that goes on to explain how good this guy could be, particularly when you match him with someone like Scorton on the other side.
I think it's an extremely self-aware quote because it shows up on film. Sometimes his speed becomes power, and where he will get such a great burst off the line that his momentum just overpowers guys. Like if he's not going around you, he will speed rush into you to the point where it's putting you on skis or on roller skates. He wins with so much bend. He's like Gumby. Like he's actually, you know what's funny is like Totero and him actually have pretty comparable um like outlooks from their positions. They're both these long, lanky, Gumby-esque players where they can bend. And like if you got an action figure when you were a kid that was like made of rubber, it's like that's what these two guys are. They've got like that's the thing with McMillan that I think's overlooked too, is that McMillan in short area is extremely smooth and quick. And I think that will lead to yak opportunities. I don't think he's going to burn anybody for a 40-yard gain, but there's like a play against Texas Tech, weirdly enough, where he catches a pass over the middle, pivots, and does like a basketball like spin move and picks up like another 25 to 30 yards down the field. I think Uman Milan is a guy who has basketball like traits, and I think as a pass rusher that's really helpful. So I know we're talking a lot about day one and day two. Let's kind of like burst through day three. So Trevor Etienne, the running back from Georgia, kind of smaller. He reminds me of a Patriots era Dion Lewis. He's going to be a third down back. I don't think he's like going to be a starter unless like, a guy you want to start unless there's like a ton of injuries or it's the end of the season and you're taking guys out of the off the field due to injury or whatever, kind of like what happened with Atlanta. He is such a natural catcher of the football that I think he's perfect on third down. That's what I think stood out about him. He's very sneakily elusive. I don't know that elusive would be the word that I would use for him, but he is very good at eluding tacklers. He's not as fast as you would like probably for 5'9", 198, but I think he's pretty impressive. He's got good vision. Here's the thing. If he can become a dual returner, he was a kick returner in college, I think his value is extremely high. It's like I pointed out in our newsletter before, I don't think Raheem Blackshear is safe. I don't think we should crown him as a kick returner because ETN at minimum is going to be the number 3 running back. And so he is almost effectively going to have the edge at kick returner. Did you have any points on ETN?
Yeah, he's a good returner. I think a lot of Panthers fans will see this pick and be like, wait, we're going to spend a 4th round pick on a running back. Aren't we kind of oversaturated there? Don't we kind of need direction there? Still don't know what's going to happen with Jonathan Brooks. Rico Dowdle, The Panthers brought him in on a 1-year deal. Don't really know what's going to go down there, if it's just going to be like a flyer on him or if they have plans for the future with him. And then, of course, taking him at the fourth round, particularly when you need a cornerback, a premier position, when you need an inside linebacker. I know there's a lot of names in that inside linebacker room, but you need some playmakers beyond Christian Rosemoon and Josie Jewell and Trevor Wallace. Is interesting. Some guys who are still on the board when they took Trevor Etienne, among them Quincy Riley, a cornerback out of Louisville, Teddy Buchanan, a linebacker out of California, and then Mac McWilliams, a cornerback out of UCF. And I know I've referenced this earlier, but McWilliams was a top 100 guy on Daniel Jeremiah's board. It's kind of remarkable that he fell so far. So, it's just something to think about. I mean, the Panthers clearly fell in love with Trevor. They couldn't, like, one of the first things out of Dan Morgan's mouth was, hey, we fell in love with the guy, as opposed to falling in love with it. They did like the prospect a lot too, but they really fell in love with the guy, and that came through. He's really smart, and he's interesting and funny, and is all these things. He clearly has gotten a lot from his brother Travis when it comes to professionalism and comporting yourself at the NFL level in front of scouts and front office people. It's just something to chew on. The Panthers didn't come out of this draft with a cornerback or an inside linebacker, and they got another running back, which I think a lot of fans will be like, hey, what's the point of that? But, hey, like, if he works out, and like you said, if he can be the returner that I think the Panthers are banking on him being, then yeah, it is what it is.
Let's get into Lathan Ransom, the 4th round pick, safety out of Ohio State. I love watching this kid. He is nails. Like, what I wrote was, it seems like he always knows where the ball is going. Like, he is a literal seek and destroy player with impressive instincts, and he can tackle. Alex, he legitimately can tackle. This is a form. I'm incredibly impressed by his motor as a blitzer, and I think he's more than just a box safety. I know they're going to put him in that box, right? But he did play some cover 2, cover 3 at Ohio State. He was playing shells. I think that he's a guy that actually could give Shaw Smith-Wade a run for his money at the nickel position, especially if they bring in a veteran to start a free safety. I like him a lot. He had 3.5 sacks and 6 forced fumbles at Ohio State. That's really good production from the standpoint of toughness and blitzing and just being a missile. The interception numbers aren't all that impressive, but that's what you got Merrick for. That's hopefully what you do when you bring in a veteran free safety. They would love to bring in a veteran. I think that's the one spot where I think they're going to look. Maybe cornerback, but I do think safety is very much on their radar. If you're a fan who's kind of nervous about that, the next few weeks, I would pay attention. Do you have anything on Ransom? Or do you want
nothing beyond the fact that the Panthers needed to emerge from this draft with the safety, and they did. And they got a hard hitter, a tone setter, someone that I think could really blossom under the mentorship of Trayvon Mulrick.
So then they went Cam Jackson to start the 5th round, and the draft community loves him. Here's what I wrote about him after kind of marinating on his highlights and his tape. I couldn't find film on everybody, so some of these are highlight driven. Imagine if a boulder was a human being playing football. That's Cam Jackson. He's like an iceberg. If you run into his area at all, you're going to the ground or you're sinking. He is a guy that just has a massive body. And I don't mean to say, like, when I say a boulder, I'm not saying he's stiff or whatever. He's actually got surprising burst for a guy who's his size at 6'6", 330. Like, he's a big dude. And I think they're really excited about Bobby Brown. But I think if you can add a guy who's like a boulder like that behind him and develop him behind him, Cam Jackson makes a ton of sense. Or if Bobby Brown, ends up being a bust signing, they've got a guy who is literally a road grader. Like, this guy makes form tackles at his size. I think he's really impressive. I think he's going to make the team. I think he's going to be part of the rotation. Like, I think when you look at this defensive front now with A'Shawn Robinson, Derek Brown, Tershawn Wharton, Bobby Brown, Cam Jackson, and and I guess Shi Smith. I mean, Shi Smith's going to have to compete. Like, he took a pay cut. I still don't know if he makes the roster. LeBron Ray played about as many defensive snaps as anyone last year out of necessity because Derek Brown went down. I don't know that he makes the roster. So they have really upgraded this group. And I think if you're paying attention, this is going to affect the inside linebacker productivity too, because as Dan Morgan told me in Palm Beach, like they had linemen in their lap all the time. I don't think these guys are going to be pushed around like this moving forward.
Yeah, it's an astute point about Shy Tuttle, and I just think that this is the Cam Jackson pick is a just good long-term planning from the organization, and that's really refreshing. So good stuff.
And like you alluded to earlier, Prince Milan, Trevor Etienne, and Cam Jackson were all in the 2023 Florida Gators. Obviously, Yuman Milan and Etienne went to other SEC schools afterwards, but they all kind of know each other. Evan Mitchell, I love this pick. I made this pick in my mock draft before the draft. Yuman Milan was my day 2 mock draft in the 3rd round. They took him in the 3rd round, so I'm going to hold myself accountable there and not bring up anything else. But I like Mitchell Evans, man. I think, when you get into that nitty gritty of like down in the day 3, you're looking for a guy who has plus traits in a couple of different ranges. He was coming off an ACL injury as a senior, came back immediately, and still put up 440 yards and 3 touchdowns. Excuse me. He's like an old school tight end. And honestly, like watching him, that's pretty complimentary to Tommy Tremble and Jatavian Sanders, who will probably play over him as the F and Y tight ends, so to speak. I like his toughness. He's almost always breaking at least one tackle after the catch. I think that's more of what they needed. I think McMillan and Evans show the big people beat up little people, even as playmakers, and I like both those picks. What do you got on them?
Just real quick from Mitchell Evans. So I got 2 premier scouts to speak about him. The first was Brad Obie, a Midwest area scout from the Carolina Panthers. The other one was this guy named Tom Zietlow, my father. He is a big Notre Dame fan. And like a couple days after the draft, it was so funny. He texted me and he goes, and this is his quote, "He is better than you might think. Before his ACL, he was on his way to being next great Notre Dame tight end. Now, over a year removed from injury, I think he'll work out great for Young." Like he like wrote it out. It was so awesome. He like wrote it out like a NFL.com scout.
Well, it's awesome.
So anyway, shout out Pops. But I mean, and also let's be clear, that's some pretty high praise calling him he was on the way to being the next great Notre Dame tight end. I mean, that's guys like Anthony Fasano, Kyle Rudolph, John Carlson, Tyler Eifert. Like these are big time names. I grew up with Anthony Fasano just like highlights blaring in my house. So like that's really high praise from a guy who knows a lot about Notre Dame football. And then of course Brad Obie, the Midwest area scout from the Panthers, couldn't have spoken more highly of Mitchell Evans. I really think that he could play a really big role in year 1, which is interesting considering you already got Jatavian Sanders last year. You already got you re-signed Tommy Tremble. I think the Panthers really upgraded their tight end room, and they did so in kind of like a way that feels like a bargain. So this is pick, like outside of the 2 edge rushers in the 2nd and 3rd round, I think Mitchell Evans is my favorite prospect on the board.
And then really quick, I've been talking about the need for speed on offense and, don't let a 4.6 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine fool you. Jimmy Horn, their 6th round and last pick. His speed on tape is so much different than 4.46. Like, this dude is a blazer. His play speed is phenomenal. There's a lot of dog to him. He can take a hit. The acceleration is there. Here's what I wrote. Horn is elusive and fast. Don't let the 40 fool you. He's a legitimate sprinter in the open field. He's also got a feistiness worth exploring. He's not afraid of contact, and he's willing to run through you. I think he is exactly what you want at the bottom of the wide receiver room. I think he will eventually, if he takes to the coaching and the peer coaching of Adam Thielen, I think he could be his successor. I know everybody's high on Jalen Coker, and Jalen Coker is a part of this wide receiver crew and it's going to develop. But man, Jimmy Horn's got like an extra gear when he gets in the open field. I think he will compete for both returner spots. I think he's going to make the final roster. I would not sleep on this 5'8", 174 dog, 74-pound dog.
Yeah,
there's a man who owns a Chihuahua that's seemingly mixed with a coyote. I can tell you, small, hungry dogs still bite hard, and I think that's the Jimmy Horn takeaway. I also loved his personality when we talked to him after the draft. Loved it. I know you did too.
I mean, the amount of text messages that I got for about a 6th round pick is just insane. There's a lot of excitement about this pick, and and he found ways to be productive and shine even in a wide receiver room that included Travis Hunter, and I think that says a lot.
And I'll give you a little nugget here. When I was in Frisco, Texas, I heard they loved him. Loved him. And I kept that in my back pocket. And lo and behold, I knew, like, when they drafted him, I was like, that's one of their guys. And he was impressive in Frisco. So was Mitchell Evans. Mitchell Evans got on my radar kind of. I watched, obviously, the college playoffs and everything like that. I don't like to watch football. Just my process, I don't like to watch college football in real time if I'm going to evaluate a guy, because I don't want the emotion of, like, I learned studying like Michael Crabtree back in the day, like, the famous Texas game. That made me kind of overanalyze him. So I don't necessarily always want to watch stuff live and then have that feeling or whatever. But anyway,
That's fair.
We're running a little bit longer, so we're going to cut one of our segments and we'll bring back on the next podcast after the rookie mini camp. But let's have some fun with numbers, okay?
All right.
Brett Tillis, Eric Eager, take the day off, okay? We're going to talk some numbers.
All right.
What will be T-Mac McMillan's rookie stat line? I want catches, I want yards, I want touchdowns. What do you got, Alex?
Oof. All right. I'm going first. All right. Are you going to Price Is Right me?
No.
Okay. All right. So you got something written down. That's good. I'm going to do this. I'm going to say he's actually quite productive.
That's a good thing. I think that's what they're hoping.
Okay, but let's do this. 70 receptions, 750 yards, and 6 touchdowns.
Okay. So I have him catching 55 passes for 875 yards. So that's an average of 15.9 yards per catch.
Wow. You're giving this offense that didn't throw the ball down the field all that much until they hit a stride, like in the middle to late part of the year, like a lot of credit. But go on.
Well, hear me out. So 55 for 875 and 7 touchdowns.
Okay.
Here's what I think's going to happen. I think they're going to let him be the wide receiver that he is his rookie year as he takes up coaching. I don't think they're going to be targeting him a lot as a possession receiver. I think that will be more of Legette's job, and that's how I think they will complement each other. So, like, Legette, I could see having, 750 off 60 catches. Like, I could see Legette leading the team in catches. That would be 12.5 yards per catch. So that's good. I could see Legette leading the team in catches just because of his gadget ability and big body across the middle. And then McMillan still leading them in yards and touchdowns, if that makes sense. And I think Thielen will probably be kind of, look, if they get 3 guys over 600 yards, I think they are ecstatic. I think, remember that we're hoping that Bryce Young, for the sake of the Panthers, takes the next step. And in order to do that, you really have to spread that ball around the field. And so if 115 passes are going into your top 2, or catches are going into your top 2 wide receivers, and then you've got Thielen, who's probably catching, 50 for, 660 and 4, I think you feel really good about that. But we can explore that later on in camp. I think McMillan's going to have a pretty good rookie year. It sounds like you think he will too.
Yeah.
as you can hear my son yelling in the background.
Oh, I can actually hear it this time.
Yeah, as he wants to take a nap, and we'll close out soon. And he's a faithful listener of the Processing Belief podcast, obviously. As my wife runs to go get him. But something else I wanted to talk about. They brought in Hunter Renfrow immediately after the draft, which surprise on a Sunday.
Right.
I think a lot of people lost their minds over this because he's from Clemson. And I always hate being the wet blanket to the Carolinas fan bases, but this really feels like a flyer. This is not, to me, this is Jordan Matthews. This is Rashad Penny. And if he can turn himself into something bigger than that, awesome. If he looks like the guy from 2021, then this offense is going to hum with him in it. And he'll be probably the backup to Adam Thielen, or they'll run they'll run heavy 11 personnel and whatever, because he would justify having a wide receiver out, a second wide receiver, in the slot. I don't know, man. I'm not taking the cheese on this one. I think a year off of football, especially at the wide receiver position, is tough. I'm not saying he won't make the roster, but I think he's going to have some sort of utility thing, because if, let's say, they keep 6 or 7 and he stays at the cost of somebody like Dan Chizina or David Moore, he's going to have to rep it on special teams, because those two guys are actually pretty prolific special teams players. So I think that will play into everything. I've never been a Renfrow guy. I mean, I think he's talented, but he would never be my first, second, or third option in an offense. His Pro Bowl year kind of felt like there was nobody else to target. And so I don't know. I'm lukewarm on this. I think it's a great flyer to take, but I don't know. People have been clamoring for him for 2 years, and I don't know. Rashad Penny said, "Hey, I still feel like I can be a top running back in this league," and then 3 days later retired.
Right.
Everything looks good on paper till it's on turf or grass. And so what's your take on this whole Hunter Renfrow thing?
Yeah. I think I think I like Hunter Renfrow a little bit more than you do as a player. But like you were saying, this team really likes David Moore. Dave Canales specifically really likes David Moore. This fan base and this team has fallen in love with Jalen Coker. You drafted 2 other wide receivers, and then on top of that, you got Adam Thielen and Xavier Legette. This is I don't know where he fits, honestly.
Right, that's my thing. Is
right.
I think it's a great story. I'm struggling. Let's say you keep 7 wide receivers. So the locks are Thielen, Legette, McMillan, probably Jimmy Horn, probably Coker. And then you've got a baby who's whining.
You got Dan Chisna, you got Hunter
Renfrow. Oh, and Hunter ready for here. Look, okay, dude. Thielen, McMillan, Legette, Horn, Coker. That's 5.
Yep.
Moore, Chizina, Hunter Renfrow. They brought in Jacoby George, who's an interesting undrafted free agent. He's got a high bonus, but just so you guys know, you can wrap that bonus into a practice squad contract. So just because he got a high bonus or a high guarantee does not mean he's going to make the team or has a favorable thing. That's not how it works. People like to put that out there like it's this big thing, but it just means he's going to get paid a lot more on the practice squad if he doesn't make the roster.
You got Muhammad.
Yeah, he's a nice story as well. And then, Kobe Hudson from UCF is nobody to kind of blank at either. So you've got 10, they're 10 deep. And so if you're going to keep 6, 4 of those dudes are getting cut. And I do wonder if Hunter Renfrow ends up becoming a Jordan Matthews, where he's on the practice squad. You just kind of shelve him until you need him. But, outside of McMillan, Legette, and Thielen, those guys need to play on special teams. Coker can play on special teams. Horn can play on special teams. Moore can play on special teams. Josina he might be the number one gunner on the team after losing Sam Franklin. So like, where does he fit? Is my thing.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Good stuff, Mike. Are we ready to go?
Yeah, let's do it.
Thanks, as always, for listening to our pontifications on all things Panthers with Mike Kaye and myself and our wonderful producer, Zach Dennis. Please subscribe and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts by searching Processing Blue. And if you watch us on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to get notified whenever new episodes drop. And finally, please be sure to stick to charlotteobserver.com for all your Panthers needs. Mike, stay humble, stay creative, and keep processing.
Shouts to the Jersey Shore Blue Claws. That's a wrap.